Good morning, everyone. It is Saturday, which means it's time for yet another Salty Saturday morning. I am the beleaguered producer of the Salty Nerd podcast, Matthew Kadish, coming at you today with an expanded network of expert panelists. But with me, as always, is the barbarian space Viking himself, Matt Vader 74. How you doing this morning?
Holy crap, dude! It's a salty sausage fest Saturday morning. Again, here we go.
Yes. And speaking of sausage, Brian from the Popcast is here.
Hey,
how you doing, buddy?
You know I like my sausage.
Yes, you love sausage. Brian, you put out a new video recently about Picard's son. You want to talk a little bit about that real quick?
Yeah, real quick. I'm correct this time, and I'm often incorrect, to be clear. But I throw out enough theories to every once in a while one sticks. And this one, I'm pretty sure I'm on the money because the actual creator of the season three of Picard immediately followed me and then started harassing me in the tweets. So, boom, on it.
Well, whenever you can get a showrunner to start harassing you on Twitter, you know you're doing something right.
I mean, he's nice. I'm not saying he's like being mean.
Yeah, I know. And newcomers to the stream is Joe and Lamar from the Perfect Turd podcast. It's a very fun bad movie podcast that I discovered on YouTube and have been really enjoying. And these guys, they're doing the Lord's work by watching some of the worst stuff ever released and telling us about it so we don't have to watch it. How you guys doing this morning?
Good.
Awesome.
Thanks for having us.
Great. Yes. Thank you so much.
Now, are you guys on audio as well as YouTube or no?
Not at the moment, just YouTube. So, and you can catch all our videos at perfectturd.com. So,
Yes.
you can
Nice.
see all the bad stuff.
We got links to everyone's YouTube in the description of this video. And we also have a link to a story about Jeffrey H. Haskell's recent Dragon Award nomination. So if you guys want to go and help out Jeff by voting for his book in the Dragon Awards, that'd be greatly appreciated. The link is in the description. But speaking of which, Jeffrey, thank you. You've been on my Bad Writing live stream before, so thanks for coming on Saturday mornings. How you doing?
Fantastic. Getting nominated for the Dragon is one of those Lifetime Achievement Awards kind of deals. So it's a pretty big deal for me. I wrote 14 superhero novels, and then I switched tracks to military sci-fi, and Against All Odds, which is the book that's nominated, was my first military sci-fi. But it's something I've wanted to write for a long time, so it's really cool to get the recognition for it, the people talking about it and loving it. So getting the Dragon Nom is just huge. I'm pretty excited about it.
That's awesome.
It's great. Congratulations.
Yeah,
man.
Congrats.
Congrats. Yeah.
It's a big deal in the author community to get nominated for these awards. And Jeffrey was actually in the military, so he knows a thing or two about the military aspect, which is, you know, just knowing how that genre goes. Like, if you don't get the military aspect right in military science fiction, the nerds come after you with a vengeance.
Hoorah. Yep.
Well, it's not the nerds that come after you; it's the military people. That's more dangerous.
I remember watching
The big thing
Stargate
about-
and having the same thing. I'm like, wait a minute, how does that add up?
Yeah, the
Yes,
big
right.
thing about military sci-fi is nailing that feeling of being in the military, you know, in the future. And if you get that right, you know, you get a lot of leeway.
I agree.
Yeah, Brian was also in the military, so he knows what's up. All right, before we get going, I just want to shout out our people in the chat. So we got Feeling Crazy, we got Anthony Mark, good to see you, Anthony. Joker Voice, how you doing? Hashtag keep talking. Gavin Blackburn is here. Orwell's son, Darth Maul. Mr. Farnsworth is in the chat. JT Gunn is here as well. So we got all of our regulars here watching us this Saturday morning. And it's a good thing, too, because we got a lot to talk about. The first of which is we're going to be talking about the Flash movie and how Warner Brothers is trying to figure out how to deal with the current Ezra Miller situation. So for those of you who don't know, got this article from Hollywood Reporter. And basically, Warner Brothers, there's been new allegations against Ezra Miller from state authorities. So, like, you know, he's been in trouble for assaulting fans before. He basically has a warrant out for federal burglary charges where he like broke into someone's home and stole a bunch of alcohol. and recently,
Why?
yeah, I don't know, but recently he's been charged with kidnapping a woman and her 3 children or something like
Oh
that
my God.
for his cult in Vermont, and things just keep piling up on this guy. And Warner Brothers has basically 3 decisions in front of them when it comes to the Flash movie. The first one is that Ezra Miller gets some help and has like a limited role in the publicity for the film, and he agrees to kind of like behave himself until the movie's out, in which case they will release it. The second one is that Miller has nothing to do with the media or the publicity for the Flash, and he kind of basically F's off, and they replace him in future incarnations. And the third one is that Warner Brothers just scraps the movie, takes a $200 million hit. They say that they're unable to reshoot it because Ezra plays multiple different characters in the film and is in almost every scene. And so like it would basically be like reshooting the entire movie. And that's just not a option for them. So I want to go around and get your guys' take on this situation, what you think Warner Brothers should be doing. Let's start with you, Matt Vader. What's your take on Millergate?
Man, this dude's a nightmare, right?
Yeah.
He's just
The Reverse Flash.
yeah. My God. Kidnapping, I mean, he didn't like roll up in a white van and throw his kids and his mom in the van and take off, right? I mean,
no, I don't
what
think
do they
so.
mean by kidnapping? It's like these people just like took off with them and
I think he's doing what R. Kelly did, where he basically isolates people from everyone else and abuses them in private.
It's like, here, mom, and your 3 kids, you want some candy?
Also, allegedly.
No.
Allegedly.
So, yeah,
Lawyers
it just
require us to say that.
seems very strange, very strange. But this is not the guy they want to reboot the DC movie franchise off of, right? I mean, what do they do? What are they going to do here? I mean, honestly, if there's a way for these studios to do this thing, I don't know. I'm not a businessman, so I don't really understand it all. But if they can write off $100 million Batgirl movie and take your tax credits or whatever they call it, this is a multi-billion-dollar company. They should probably do it again with this thing and just start over. I think that's kind of what Zaslav wants to do anyway. But man, there's no way I would be rebooting the DC universe off the back of Ezra Miller movie. He's toxic. He's like the worst of the worst right now. I mean, they can't even put him in Harry Potter movies. It's ridiculous. So,
yeah, remember how they removed Johnny Depp from Harry Potter, but Ezra Miller got a pass?
Yeah. It's insane.
Well, Hollywood's full of pedophiles, so
yeah, I mean,
It's true.
It's a very strange situation. I don't envy them, but this thing is not gonna. I don't think it's gonna make any money if they do release it as it is, because I'm not gonna go watch it, and I consider myself a pretty normal moviegoer. I know we talk about a lot of movies, but if I'm gonna go pay, we talk about a lot of old movies. We don't go watch a lot of new ones. So when I buy a ticket and go spend $60 to go to a movie, it better be a good movie, and this one isn't gonna see my wallet open for it, I guess is what I'm saying. So yeah, they gotta reboot. I think they gotta just put it in the shitter and start over. So
all right, so Brian, in addition to all the other movies Warner Brothers is shelving, if they were to shelve this movie, that would mean that they could be looking at upwards of a $500 million cost-eating measure, which is a little high.
it is.
And also, I found it interesting that all the news outlets that are covering this story, they're referring to Ezra Miller by his preferred pronouns, they, them. And it's like Ezra Miller can go and abuse children and kidnap people and burgle places. But if you misgender him, you get canceled on social media. So
right.
I just wanted to know what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, I actually, a few weeks ago, I tweeted out like, hey, well, Ezra Miller is officially the Reverse Flash. I don't know what this guy's problem is. And like 3 tweets. Excuse me? That's not, you need to at least use their preferred pronouns. And I'm like, I didn't even use pronouns, guys. I just said this guy is nuts. Yeah, I mean, that's ridiculous. one of their own, because like, so on Twitter there's like this very extreme set of people that are just really sort of nuts about the virtue signaling, and one of their own, one of their darlings is literally nuts. And it's crazy to see a lot of these people that are very vocal about the most innocuous of offenses of Chris Pratt are very quiet about Ezra Miller, like immediately. It's crazy to see that. They'll complain about Chris Pratt praying or whatever, but oh no, everyone shut up about Ezra Miller. You know, as far as the reboot goes, you know, the Flash is actually tied into, like, you know, all the other movies right now. Black Adam, Shazam, Aquaman. Like, the Flash is like sort of like their mini Endgame or their mini Infinity War. It sort of leads up to that. So they can't scrap the movie without damaging the other movies. So my thoughts were, in canon, was just to kill Ezra Miller's character off. Like, kill off the Flash.
Or
If you
trap
kill
him
the
in
Flash
Speed
off,
Force or something.
yeah, have him sucked into the Speed Force, and have this great, awesome, like, you know, as the audience is like, what happened to Ezra Miller? You can have an end credit scene where the Speed Force opens up, or whatever their version is, and out pops, you know, another Flash, and he's wearing like he has like the yellow stripes, and the comic book fans go nuts when they're like, oh my God, it's Wally West, or whatever, you know. That's the way to do it. That way you kill that guy, and, you know, you're not basing the entire franchise on the Flash. You know, you're basing it on, or Barry Allen's Flash. You're basing it on a new Flash. You know, that's what I would do.
So, Joe and Lamar, one of the things I've been hearing from the news media is that Ezra Miller's already done at DC. Basically, like, once this movie comes out, if it gets released or whatever, he's not going to be coming back and reprising the role, even if he gets his act together. So, you know, if Warner Brothers were to scrap this, you know, they probably would put their weight behind a new Flash or whatever. What do you guys think of this situation, and what do you think Warner Brothers should do?
I wouldn't scrap the movie. Listen, my whole thing about this movie is I just want to see Michael Keaton as the Batman again, or whatever. So I don't really care about Ezra Miller anyway. So
yeah,
I would just put it out and then just get rid of Ezra, and then that would be the end of him, and move forward. I like the idea of like just a new Flash, not the Barry Allen Flash. That's
well,
what
Lamar, you know, one of the things about this movie was that it was setting up to replace Henry Cavill with the Supergirl character, and it was setting up to replace Ben Affleck with the Michael Keaton character. And apparently they've been doing a bunch of reshoots on Aquaman and you know, Shazam and stuff like that in order to try to fix this, because they're bringing Ben Affleck back, and they want to bring Henry Cavill back, as from what I'm hearing. So what do you think about this? Would it be better just to scrap this movie?
That's the hard thing, because I never thought this was a Flash movie anyway. I thought this was just a variant Batman movie. I'm a huge Batman fan, so when I watch the trailer and I see Michael Keaton show up, and then I hear Ben Affleck's going to be in it, I'm just like, well, this is just, you know, the movie that I wanted. Like, Michael Keaton, like, maybe reprising his role. I mean, honestly, if they can do reshoots, I mean, that would be the best thing they could do, because taking a loss like that, I mean, it was mentioned before, the Batgirl movie was just canceled, and there was nothing really wrong with it. I mean, it was like, that's 90 million. Yeah, well, yeah. And then it's just, you know, if they can do reshoots, but if realistically, I would be shocked if they still released it, because of all the bad press that Ezra Miller has brought to it. He's on all the scenes. He was supposed to be the multiverse person. And so now it's kind of like, what are we going to do now? So it would be shocking if they released it, but, you know, I would just say try to reshoot it if you can't. Try.
What would it cost to deep fake him or something with someone else's?
Right.
Oh, that would cost like $2. You can do that on Instagram or something.
I know some guys on YouTube that can do that.
Have a YouTuber do it.
I'm pretty sure there's an app
just
for that.
a phone filter.
It's a phone filter, yeah.
The anti-Ezra filter.
Yeah, there you go. Boom, we just made a new app.
Dude, that's $1 million moneymaker right there. Absolutely.
Bam. There you go. Mm-hmm.
So Jeffrey, you're a comic book fan, and
Oh, yeah.
you've obviously got a lot to say about this. What do you think Warner Brothers should do in this situation? And you know, what's funny is there are a lot of people out there who say, if Ezra Miller is in this movie when it's released, I'm not going to go see it and support a person like that. It's kind of like the Amber Heard scenario where they're removing her from Aquaman 2 because everyone just thinks that she's the worst person in the world. And so if Ezra Miller gets any worse, you know, is it going to hurt the box office?
Well, their big problem is that you know, I read a lot about how movies are made, and at one point was a screenwriter, and it's not just whatever the budget of the movie is, right? It's the budget of the movie plus marketing, which is, while they never reveal their marketing numbers, it's always at least whatever the movie costs. So we're not looking at $200 million, we're looking at $400 million. Then you're talking about overseas release stuff, which is another probably $150 to $200 million. And if that movie comes out and bombs, they can't write it off as a tax release or as a tax, break, because they released the movie. If they don't release the movie, they can write it off. So I don't know what Zaslav is thinking. I actually called. I tracked down his phone number to his executive assistant and called him and told him I could save DC Comics if he wanted me to, because DC Comics is in such a bad way. I'd call Marvel, but I don't know who to call at Marvel. I don't think anybody's in charge over there but the editors. But if it was me, I was thinking the whole time, I'm like, just dude, hire somebody to deepfake Grant Gustin over him, and then do what they should have done in the first place and have Grant be the Flash. You know, and if they want to kill him off at the end and introduce Wally West because they want a person who's more dynamic or whatever, fine. But Grant was the best Barry Allen, at least in the first couple of seasons. And
up until you introduced all of his supporting cast, that's what.
Yeah, this show had other problems, but none of them were related to Grant.
Right, you're right.
Him and Ollie did, or him and Stephen Amell did such a great job as those characters. The problems those shows had nothing to do with those two actors, or whoever, right? Whoever is the Flash, it doesn't really matter, and just deepfake them. You know, it cost $1 million, maybe $20 million, whatever. They've got a year. You can't tell me they couldn't. You can make all the special effects changes for Justice League in 3 months. You can't deepfake Ezra Miller out of that movie. They did that for what was that show where the guy turned out to be like a rapist, pedophile, and he had friends in the royal family. So he released that video with that cup saying Prince Andrew on it or whatever. It was the political show on Netflix everybody loved.
House of Cards.
Yeah, House of Cards. That's what they did for him. You know, they got rid of him and put.
You're talking about Kevin Spacey and All the Money in the World, that Ridley Scott movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, they actually went back and reshot that, but he wasn't the main character in it.
But they got a year. They could deepfake Ezra out of it. I never liked him as the Flash, anyways. He runs like an idiot.
I know he does, right?
He does run weird.
But I was pretty excited to hear that Zaslav really wants Henry Cavill back as Superman. Henry's probably the best Superman.
I agree.
The problems Ben Affleck had as Batman were all the writing. None of it was his performance. I thought he did a great job as Batman. But the writing in Justice League, both from Snyder and Whedon, was terrible. And
I think the hard part of Affleck being Batman for him was just like having to keep that physique. He's in his like 50s.
Yeah,
and it's hard to get that Batman body and keep it that way. So
I'm working on it.
So am I. So I wanted to just open this up to the panel. So speaking of the Arrowverse stuff, there's been rumors coming out recently that Zaslav, the new head of Warner Brothers, is considering tapping into Greg Berlanti as the Kevin Feige of the DC universe going forward. What do you guys think of that? Because Greg Berlanti is the guy who did all the Arrowverse shows, The Flash, the Arrow, Legends of Tomorrow, all that stuff.
Did they fire him?
So you're saying they're just going to turn it into a CW teenage soap opera?
Berlanti is a super producer. He's got like 1 billion different shows going, and he also has kind of like a familiarity with the DC universe, and so they're thinking that someone with that type of production experience and familiarity with the source material would be good to kind of like oversee all the different productions going forward. But again, this is just a rumor at this stage, but we don't know for sure. But do you guys think Berlanti would make a good Kevin Feige for DC?
I mean, he did a great job on the Green Lantern movie. Oh wait, no, he didn't.
I'm gonna say no. Probably not.
I want to ask Joe and Lamar. Have you guys ever reviewed the Green Lantern movie for your show?
We have not. That might be something that
we have seen it. Boy, oh boy, and it sucks because Green Lantern was one of my favorite superheroes growing up, and then you go see it, and you're like, well, childhood destroyed. So I mean, I think the idea of having like a head of the DC cinematic universe is a good idea. Arrow, I think somebody kind of hit it on the head. It's kind of like it was a teen drama, especially the first season. I was just like, holy crap, you should be shooting people with arrows. I just think they just need a direction. That's just what I think they need. The Berlanti, I don't know. Like, that's stretching it a little bit, maybe. Yeah.
I don't know much about him, but same thing. Like having that one person with a singular focus for the whole thing, I think that will help. They just have to find the right person.
I don't know if you guys know the story about how Kevin Feige became the head of Marvel for this.
It was Game of Thrones shit. Yeah.
No, it was way before that. He was a producer on the original X-Men movie, and he was just so to speak, a kid at the time. And he was in the room with all the other producers and the writers and the director, whose name I can't, Bryan Singer, and they were talking about like character problems. And Marvel had sent over all the X-Men comics. Now I want to do this movie. I want to do a movie for Marvel just so they'll send me all the comics. But and every time they came up with a problem, he'd pull out an issue and he's like, "Hey, listen, this issue deals with this. Let's just do this." And they're like, "No, we can't do that." And that was his whole thing is that he would look at the comics and he would see these complex storylines that were in the comic books, and then the directors would go out of their way to solve it some other way because they didn't want to be copying the comic book. So they need someone like that, not like one singular head of. The problem isn't that they have too many cooks. The problem is they have too many cooks and none of them know how to cook. They need somebody who knows how to cook. They need somebody who can look at the comics and go, okay, there is 70 years of lore in here and these writers knew what they were doing. Let's use this instead of like, there's a multiverse. Now I'm going to write a whole story about a multiverse that has nothing to do with the comics because I never read them.
Right.
Yeah. Brian, what do you think about Greg Berlanti as possibly being the Kevin Feige of DC?
I think it's a mistake. I agree with the rest of the panel. I think that there should be one, or a team of people guiding the DC. I like the fact that Zaslav and Warner Media was like, look, DC's going to have their own studio now. I'm surprised and shocked that DC has not already had their own studio. It makes no sense. Marvel started with their own studio. So the fact they're gonna have their own studio is great, and that it does need a guiding hand. It needs at least one or a few people that are fans of the material that also understand how to deal with the studio that can run that individual offshoot studio. But Greg Berlanti, he's done some decent stuff that weren't teenage heartthrob stuff. Like if you look at the Constantine series, it was pretty good before it got shit canned. There is some stuff he's done that was great, but he is also very weak. He's a spineless human being, and he sort of follows the whims of social media and the studio. Even if he has good ideas, I think those good ideas are often plagued by his inability to stand up for what he's trying to work on. Case in point, Constantine. It started off really, really well, and then the moment other people got involved, it fell apart because I don't think Greg Berlanti is he's just not strong enough to deal with other people's wills. So he's not the wrong guy.
I'm looking at his IMDb right here, and the only thing on here that I could say that I actually really ever liked was the first couple seasons of Flash, the first couple episodes of Arrow, and maybe Free Guy. So,
Free Guy was good.
This guy's not for me. I don't think he's the right dude to guide the DCU.
Free Guy was good because of the director and Ryan Reynolds, not really because of Berlanti.
Yeah.
It really.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
So one of the, talking about TV real quick before we move on to our next topic, there's been a lot of rumors going around about DC's current TV slate. So there's been rumors that both Doom Patrol and Titans are going to get axed by Zaslav because those are holdovers from when DC tried to launch their failed streaming service, which never made any sense to me why you would launch a separate DC streaming service when you're trying to launch HBO Max at the same time. Just make it one and the same.
Especially when you don't even have a studio for DC.
Yeah, and also there's talk about all the Berlanti Arrowverse stuff ending because that's all on the CW. But one of the big things is that there's been a Green Lantern TV show, the Lantern Corps TV show, in development for quite some time, and it's up in the air right now whether or not that's going forward. I've heard that it's not been canceled yet, but at the same time, it's like, well, with Warner Brothers' renewed interest on making DC material tentpole stuff going forward, where does this stand? We know for a fact that James Gunn's Peacemaker is still going forward. We know that the Batman sequel with Robert Pattinson hasn't been greenlit yet, and there's a Penguin TV show that's still moving forward that its fate could be up in the air.
Yeah,
so we just don't know. Yeah, we don't know what is going on the TV side of things. Would you guys like to see any of these shows persist, Jeff?
I would love to see a sequel to the Batman. I really enjoyed that movie, but the director made it clear that it was a standalone film, that it wasn't part of the DC universe, and it was his take on the Batman. And I really appreciated that because I'm totally okay with Elseworlds. You want to do Elseworld movies until the world ends, that's fine. You want to do Red Son of Krypton, you want to do the King Arthur Superman, that's great. Do that. Don't then tell me, though, it's canon. And so when they did the Batman with Robert Pattinson, I thought he did a decent job as Batman, but the filmmaking aspect of it was just like that scene when he's coming out of the Batmobile and there's those flames behind him. I mean, that was an awe-inspiring scene. The rest of that crap, though, can just go away. I don't understand this whole, we want a Penguin TV show. Who's asking for a Penguin TV show?
Right.
No one.
Nobody really
who
is.
asked for a show about Batman as a kid? You know
Nobody.
what I mean? Who asked for a Batgirl movie that had really nothing to do with Batgirl, or a Batwoman show,
Or Pennywise,
Pennywise, or it reminds me of Sony when they were like, we're going to do Aunt May Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. movie.
I see a lot of stuff on social medias about how fans are clamoring and praying that all of these side characters get their own series and stories on all the streaming networks and stuff. It's just like, I know we're going to talk about it here in a little bit, but the Joanna Constantine. I read an article where the fans are clamoring and praying that she gets her own series, and it's in the works and all this kind of stuff. And it's just the same kind of thing with this stuff. It's like there's so many side characters and villains and everything that they can't all have their own series, and I don't think anybody wants to see all that stuff anyway. You know what I mean?
I didn't even know that was supposed to be John Constantine at first.
Well, it's not supposed to be John Constantine, but
someone
we're going to talk about that in a little bit. We're going to talk about that in a little bit.
When I saw that, I lost my mind.
Yeah.
Well, you have to understand the writers who are writing this stuff, they're all younger than millennials for the most part, or they're trying to tap into Gen Z.
Yeah.
And what I have learned is because all of these writers grew up watching anime, and this is not a knock against anime. It's just a different type of storytelling. It's like what's wrong with Marvel Comics right now and DC Comics. All they want is a slice of life. They're not interested in heroic stories. They just want slice of life. So when they see a character like Joanna Constantine or Penguin, as cool as he was in the Batman movie, because he was pretty cool, and a different take, they want to see that person going to the grocery store. And for the rest of us who are professional storytellers, who analyze stories for a living, who understand Greek myth and the way stories work in our brains, historically speaking, and have for thousands of years, we're like, that's not a story. That's just you living vicariously through a character that you like. And it
also, Jeffrey, the typical heroic storyline is now considered toxic masculinity by a lot of these millennial writers, and they're like, we want to get away from that.
Yeah, I've sold 200,000 novels on toxic masculinity then.
Yeah, there you go. You know what's funny? Every time I see this stuff, I go, You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of like the old Tumblr fan fiction, like the Tumblr shipping and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember reading through some of those, like the top fan fictions, and being like, none of this makes sense. It's garbage. Why are these like characters that no one cares about, right? All in the front, and why are they all having sex with each other? I don't get it. That's pretty much every time I see one of these new shows, I'm like, so a Tumblr writer wrote this.
Rule 34 writing.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I think these companies need to be very careful about giving every little side character that's popular their own series, because next thing you know, all of a sudden what we get is the Book of Boba Fett, and that kind of sucked. So
the ending was good. I really enjoyed the last three episodes when it became the Mandalorian.
You mean when it became the Mandalorian season?
You mean
3?
the Mandalorian 3.5?
Yeah. Yeah. As soon as they introduced Mando, it got great.
I think the weird thing. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, Joe Lamar, do you guys have anything you want to add to this?
I'm a huge Batman fan, and the thing is that I'm interested in how Batman relates to all of these characters. Like when you're going to do a Penguin show, I don't care. Like he is there for to go against Batman and stuff like that. Like maybe I don't even know what the brainchild of it was just like maybe we want to show like the inner workings of maybe the criminal part of Gotham. But the thing is, if I'm watching that, I'm like, okay, when is Batman going to come into this?
Right.
Like that?
Where's Batman?
Where's Batman? And it's like I think what happens with these companies is like, okay, how do we use Batman in another way to make more money? But then when you do that, you stretch everything thin, and then you're going to be like, well, how are we going to write this Penguin show without Batman?
Hey, Lamar, did you guys, when the Catwoman movie came out, did you feel that way about the Catwoman movie? You're like, what's the point of this movie without Batman?
What are you talking about with Halle Berry?
Yeah, way back when.
Well, I will.
That's
say,
not fair.
Yeah, I was.
Okay, putting Halle Berry aside.
Oh, okay,
right?
Terrible.
Halle Berry.
That was a movie?
I'm not asking you to diss Halle Berry, right?
I thought that was a series of attractive pictures. I didn't know.
But whenever they make a show like that or a movie like that, it was like Gotham. I'm like, okay, what is the point of this show without Batman? Because it's Batman.
Yeah.
I mean, these characters mean nothing unless they're interacting with Batman.
I was about to bring up Gotham because that very much was a Penguin show for a while. They focused so much on him and his kind of backstory in a way. So I was like, that's good enough. I don't need to see it again.
Well, the Warner Brothers has had like a really weird history of how they treat their comic book properties, where they're trying to make the cinematic universe, but at the same time, they're doing all these like side one-off shows. Like for instance, the sequel to The Joker is finally going into production with Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn. And The Joker was its own standalone thing. It made like $1 billion and has nothing to do with the current DC continuity. And you're like, why are they continuing with this? Same thing with The Batman, where it's like its own standalone Batman thing. Are you going to have a standalone Batman thing going on concurrently with the Batman stuff they're trying to do in the DCEU? Is that going to confuse audiences? So Warner Brothers has just had a very strange track record when it comes to this stuff. And talking about like Warner Brothers had a very long-standing rule, I think, since basically the early 90s, where basically Smallville wasn't allowed to use the character of Batman, and Batman was reserved specifically for movies, and you weren't allowed to use him in TV shows because they wanted to. They thought that putting him in TV shows would devalue the character, and they didn't want too many versions of Batman out there confusing audiences. Yeah. And so, like the hard and fast rule was you can't use Batman except if you're doing an official movie for Batman.
And Tom couldn't put on the cape.
Yeah, and that's why in Gotham you didn't see Batman until like the very end of the show or like whatever. So, Jeffrey.
Okay, so superheroes. I'm gonna have a lot to say, but one thing I really thought was interesting about that is that all made sense right up until No Way Home. Nobody had a problem with No Way Home. Otherwise, it wouldn't have made $1.5 billion. Nobody had a problem with understanding that these were different Spider-Men from different universes or different timelines. I don't think anybody would have a problem with the Batman being filmed and Batfleck being filmed. I just, as long as they're good, that's the thing. They always talk about superhero fatigue. Oh, it's superhero fatigue. No, your movie sucks.
Yeah, but you got to set it up too, though. You can't just
the thing about No Way Home was that was part of the continuity of the current Marvel universe. So, if you're continuing to do like if Sam Raimi's Spider-Man was going concurrently with Tom Holland's Spider-Man, people would just be like, why am I watching two different Spider-Man movies?
Because they're two different Spider-Man and they're both written well. Why wouldn't you?
Maybe, I don't know. Spider-Man 3 wasn't very
good
well
movies. Well, yeah, that wasn't Sam Raimi's fault, but that's a whole other podcast.
But average moviegoers aren't comic book nerds like us. They're not going to understand that. They're going to be like, "Oh, that's a different guy."
And speaking of,
I think moviegoers are more intelligent than the studios give them credit for. Just like I think readers are more intelligent than most authors give them credit for. And there's nothing that says you can't just expect your audience to learn. When you dumb stuff down, you don't make it more accessible. You dumb down your audience.
I agree to a degree, but I agree to a degree. However,
I understand what you're saying.
There are people that aren't paying attention like the way we do, and all they see is the trailer on their favorite network television show, and audience, no matter how smart they are easily confused because this is not important to them. They'll go see the next blockbuster movie, but it's not important enough to them for them to follow it extensively the way we do. Most people aren't even going to know, honestly. Outside of social media and Twitter and our circles, most people aren't even going to know about the Ezra Miller stuff. My wife loves all the DC stuff, has no idea what's going on with Ezra Miller. I made a comment. I'm like, "Oh, the new Flash is crazy," and she goes, "I don't know what you're talking about." So most fans aren't going to know.
So, guys, speaking of DC Comics, we're going to move on here.
Okay.
But real quick to the chat, if you guys want your chats featured and read and responded to by the panel, feel free to drop us super chats. We really appreciate those. They help go towards supporting the stream.
That's right.
But let's talk about another DC.
What's my percentage of that? We didn't talk
which is
percentage.
0. You get 0.
Okay.
Yeah.
0, period to 0.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about Netflix's The Sandman now. And basically, this was Neil Gaiman's kind of magnum opus for comic books. And Sandman has been the most streamed series on Netflix in its first week. It's a very expensive show that is paying off for Netflix. And a lot of people, like when they're watching this, they're kind of like, why isn't this on HBO Max? And it's because the show was so expensive that HBO actually passed on it. It was like, you guys can go shop it somewhere else. And so they went and they got a Netflix deal. And Netflix has desperately been trying to find a new tentpole original series that they can kind of build stuff around. All their recent adaptations like Cowboy Bebop and all this other stuff failed spectacularly. And the only thing that they've really got going for them right now is Stranger Things. And that's kind of wrapping up. So they're looking for a new hit. And it looks like they found one with Sandman. And there's an interesting story behind how this show kind of came about, which is basically it was in development hell for 30 years. So Neil Gaiman, a big-time fantasy author, he came on board DC. They created a whole new publishing house just for him. It's called Vertigo Publishing. It was an offshoot of DC Comics. And he wrote this story that it's kind of like in his wheelhouse. And it was a big hit. And immediately Warner Brothers was like, okay, let's adapt this into a movie. And Neil Gaiman was like, please don't, because I want to finish my comic run before we even start talking about movies. And Warner Brothers was like, well, that's weird that you don't want your thing adapted into a movie, but okay. And so over the course of 30 years, it's gone through various different stages of development, almost getting made into different movies and whatnot. And what happened is that during that 30 years, Neil Gaiman went off and did Good Omens, where he wrote every episode. It's an Amazon original series based on his novel. He wrote every episode. He was the showrunner on it, and he even directed a few episodes. And so he's got some experience doing, television. And David S. Goyer, who is the executive producer on this Sandman TV show, he was also the guy who adapted Foundation for Apple TV. He was the guy who wrote the Batman movies with Christopher Nolan. He's the guy who wrote all the Blade movies and directed the third one and all that stuff. He came to Neil Gaiman and he was like, hey, you've got, previously all the adaptation opportunities didn't involve Neil Gaiman because they're like, he's just a novelist. He doesn't know how to do movies and TV shows. And Goyer was like, hey, now that you've got some TV under your belt, I want you to come on board with Warner Brothers to help me adapt this property. And so for the first time, Neil Gaiman was actually involved in the adaptation of Sandman to different media. And so all the different casting choices were approved by him. One of the big things is that John Constantine, who was introduced in the original Sandman series, he was gender swapped and made into a character named Joanna Constantine. And the reason for that was because Warner Brothers was like, we have plans for John Constantine, so you can't use him in this Netflix show and confuse people. So they had to change that character a little bit. But for the most part, this is a very faithful adaptation of the Sandman series. And it seems to be paying off for Netflix. I've already heard that they've approved a season 2 going forward. And this adaptation covers the first 2, I believe, chapters of the Sandman graphic novel. And I'm about 6 episodes in. I'm really liking it so far. Like it's a pretty good.
I thought
show.
it was first 2 volumes of Sandman.
That's what I mean for first 2 volumes.
Yeah.
I'm liking it so far. I think it's a very pretty show. It reminds me a lot of Foundation, how Foundation was adapted on Apple TV. So I want to get your guys' take on like the long journey at adapting comic books into movies and TV shows, and just what you think of it in general. So let's start with you, Matt Bader.
So before we get going, I want to highlight Joker's super chat. Thank you very much, Joker. Joker is one of our mods, one of our friends here in Vegas. He's a local. $10. Thank you, Joker. Sandman could have been so good. The gender race swapping, though, what they did to characters, especially Death, Lucifer, and Constantine, is criminal. # keep talking. Okay. I did not read the comic book, so I came into Sandman with a fresh brain. However, I did collect comic books back in the day, and I am somewhat familiar with these characters. And I was watching through this show going, okay, this show is gorgeous, and I'm really kind of enjoying what they're doing here. And I like the different stories they're telling. This episode 5 with the diner episode was great. And I really liked the episode. I think it was the one where Death came in, his sister, and they kind of walked through the world, and she was going around visiting people who were dying and everything. But the whole time I'm watching this thing, I'm going, something's wrong, because is that supposed to be Death from the goth looking chick with the necklace and the dark hair and the pale skin and everything, and it just didn't. It seemed off to me. You know what I mean? I have nothing bad to say about the actress who played the role. I thought she did great. But the problem I have with these shows when they do this is that the back of my brain always feels like there's something wrong. The same kind of thing hit me with Constantine character. We all know who she's supposed to be, but it doesn't play right to fans' heads. And I understand that they're doing the Hollywood thing, and they're what's the word? They're diversifying the cast and the characters, and they're playing to the studio's proclivities to diversify things up and all this kind of stuff. And I wish they wouldn't. I wish they would just stick to the source material for the most part, because that's what the fans want to see. And that's not me saying anything bad about what they've done, because I thought the actors and actresses and stuff that they got to play in this did a great job. I like this show. It's a really good show. I'm not finished with it yet. I still got 3 episodes to go, but I just wish they would leave this stuff alone sometimes. That's all. It's like you telling me they couldn't find a good actress to play Death. I mean, how many comic book shops have you gone into that aren't completely plastered with Death's posters and T-shirts and everything all over the place? I mean, to change that iconic of a character to me seems very strange. It's just I don't know. It's a very strange thing to me when they do this to this extent.
Well, I'll say this. So the change with Lucifer, turning Lucifer into a woman, played by Gwendolyn Christie.
Mm-hmm.
That was in response. They didn't want to confuse that Lucifer with the one from his own TV show that Fox did a while back. And so like they wanted to make it different enough where because it's the same Lucifer, those 2 characters. The Joanna
Constantine on that show too, I think.
Yeah, and the Joanna Constantine thing was just a rights issue. But I want to go to Jeffrey on this, because is there a difference when the creator of the source material, Neil Gaiman, he had a producer credit on this. He had a lot of creative control and how the show was made and adapted. If he's the one making these changes, does that make it okay?
You know, what makes it okay is if the story stays good. That's what makes it okay. What doesn't make it okay is if the purpose of changing death to a woman of color was to talk about the condition of women of color in the afterlife, then that's not okay. But if the purpose is this was the best actress they could find, and by all accounts she's really good, and she brought something to the role that was great, and she just happens to be a woman of color, great. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't like changing the source material for the sake of changing the source material. I think that's wrong. The funny thing about Hollywood is they want it both ways. They want women and men to be absolutely the same, but then, you know, they also want special treatment for people who aren't men. And so it's like, I'm a writer. I've written 14 superhero novels with female leads. One of them was Hispanic and one of them was African American, and people absolutely love them. My audience is 34 to 64-year-old white guys, and they never had a problem with it at all, ever. Not even a peep about, oh, I wish she wasn't Hispanic, or I wish she wasn't black. None of that. Not a single one. And I've sold like 100,000 superhero novels. So the idea of changing the gender or the race of a character isn't in itself bad. It's why you're doing it and what you do with it when you're done. And so, for instance, Hollywood right now is in the process of removing redhead people from the gene pool.
It's crazy.
And I think that's one of the reasons why the Batgirl show got so much bad press, is because she's like the most famous ginger in comic books. I mean, like, you could maybe argue Mary Jane was more famous, but I would say it's always been Batgirl. And so to just randomly cast her differently because you want to be more inclusive or whatever, that's not good. But if the story is still good and the character is still the character from the comic books, then I don't necessarily see a problem in of itself, as long as the purpose isn't to spotlight inequality in whatever you're recasting with.
All right, Brian, do you have any thoughts on the adaptation of Sandman being one of Netflix's big hits?
So many. Oh my God, so many. First off, Jenna Coleman is awesome. She is a great actress, and I loved her in Doctor Who. In fact, the only reason I watched Doctor Who initially was because of Jenna Coleman. However, I don't care how good the story is. I mean, it could be amazing, and I will enjoy it, but I won't consider this person Constantine.
Right.
There's no reason to swap anything involving the characters, whether you looked at the comic books or not. When they go, oh, we didn't want people confusing him with the Lucifer from the TV show that we also happen to have on Netflix now. What a silly thing to say. Oh, we don't want them confusing Constantine with the guy who made a cameo in that Lucifer series. No one's confusing these things. No one is confusing the CW shows with this series. That's nuts. And honestly, the Lucifer actress, no matter how good she was in Game of Thrones or whatever she was in Game of Thrones, right? She was yeah. So she was great in Game of Thrones. Great, perfect casting. Not good for Lucifer. Lucifer is supposed to be this like, almost this like playboy. He's supposed to be
Pretty.
Pretty boy, misogynistic. Yeah, that's no.
You know, she should have won. She should have won an award for her portrayal of Phasma. It was amazing.
Oh, I mean, I didn't even know she was in that movie until I read the credits.
Yeah. I want to add something about the pretty part. Neil Gaiman's British, and if you ever watch British TV show, you'll notice that nobody's pretty. And something my wife comments a lot: people get acting jobs in America because they're good looking. People get acting jobs in Britain because they can act. And so, yeah, that's my big problem watching British shows. I'm like, I don't want to look at this person's face anymore.
Yeah, it's really difficult, right?
Yeah, David Thewlitt in this TV show, there's a part where like a waitress calls him handsome, and he's like, do you really think I'm handsome? And he makes her tell the truth, and she's like, no, you're not. It's like he's not a good looking guy.
Yeah,
anyway,
so
continue. Brian.
Yeah, the problem with this is that, the show is great. The story is really wonderful. Charles Dance does a phenomenal job. So far I'm really enjoying it. But every single when I saw Joanna Constantine, oh my god, I lost my mind. I was like, I knew Jenna Coleman was going to be in the series, and I was stoked. And then when I realized that it was taking my favorite character from the Vertigo comics, and the crazy thing is, they've had two really good versions of Constantine. Like they did, Keanu Reeves Constantine was good. The version on the CW, I forgot his name. Great. They had him cross over into Lucifer. They had him cross over on the series. Even though his actual show didn't go past the first season, the character was so good that he ended up being on like 3 or 4 other CW shows as recurring character. What a perfect casting. You don't have to replace this character. If you want to check boxes, the character already checks boxes. The actual character is a bisexual man, and he has no problem telling the whole world about it. You don't got to check boxes with this show. You can just cast the person that's perfect for the role and use the actual character that's already been set up to check your boxes, and you're done. Boxes checked, man.
Well, Brian, if Warner Brothers wasn't allowing them to use the character of John Constantine, what would you have done?
I wouldn't have had Constantine in the series.
But I mean, he's a part of the original comics.
If Warner Bros. Is not allowing you to use Constantine, changing the character to Joanna Constantine is not a loophole.
Well, I'll say this: the character of Joanna Constantine in the show basically does everything that John Constantine does in the book. In fact, they even they didn't even give her a boyfriend; it was still a girlfriend that he had to basically like kill off. So like it's not changing anything from the story. It's just like the character just happens to be female. And the character of Joanne Constantine as like the Lady Constantine from like the 1700s or whatever is still in the show as well, played by the same actress, which is kind of funny. It's the Back to the Future rules. Anyway, Joe and Lamar, I want to get your guys' take on this because you guys haven't seen the show yet. But do you have any ideas on like how Netflix is doing these adaptations? Because they've done a lot of failed adaptations recently.
Cowboy Bebop, go ahead, Joe. Yeah, yes.
I was going to say because I've never seen the show and I don't really know the comics, but it's good to see that they're doing something other than Superman stuff, like a dark fantasy film. Because we interviewed on our show Scott Bryan Wilson, who's a comic book writer who's worked for DC. And he was saying this is like the new frontier for comic book writers because streaming services are going to look to comic books for content now. Because you have not only a universe, you have your setting, your story. It's like, perfect. So just the fact that this is doing so well for Netflix, it's like I said, it's a new frontier of, we don't necessarily need the big characters like the Superman that everyone knows. We can go with something else and people will like it if we do it well. So I think it's exciting.
What about you, Lamar?
Agreed. I think you guys mentioned Joanna Constantine before. I was a fan of the interpretation that Keanu Reeves gave. I wasn't familiar with the comic, but I was like, you can do more with this.
Agreed. Totally.
But it's weird because here's what it is. Here's conspiracy theory of Lamar. When you do like the race swapping of race swapping, gender swapping, what they're doing is they're basically repackaging something and then saying, this is new. So they're not really taking a chance on somebody who is of like a different race or gender. It's like, well, why do we have to rewrite? Like, why do we have to write a new character? Let's just make, I don't know, like Batman black. Let's make, Constantine a woman. So it's basically, it's almost like a mandate where it's like, we got to keep the money in, but we don't want to take a risk. That's what bothers me a lot. Like I said, I'm a Batman fan. I don't care if he's like black or white, but just make sure it's written well. But then if I like black characters, I love Blade, take a chance and make a new actual character that is a black man.
Lamar, would you not lose your mind if they all of a sudden made Blade some white guy from the south side of Texas or whatever?
Let me say this. I would be like, okay, so don't y'all have Van Helsing? Like, it's like, what
Boom.
what do you just do something?
You have
different.
the characters, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, That's the thing where I'm just like, yay, diversity, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, it's the same piece of candy in a new packaging, basically.
Writing new characters is not hard.
Yeah.
I do it all the time. Writing characters that are relatable that people like is not hard. The problem comes in that they've got these writers who don't want to write characters that people are going to like, and so they make new characters like the psychopath Riri Williams, or they make characters like Kamala Khan, whose only characteristic is that she's Muslim, and then they get mad when people don't like them. And I'm like, no, it's really easy to make a character relatable and likable. You make a character that is a good person, and you put them in a terrible situation where they have to make terrible choices to get out, and then they have to give up the things that they want. That is how you make a character. And it doesn't matter if it's Batman or Spider-Man or whoever. It doesn't matter their race or their gender. It's the same formula. And it is a formula because it's a formula that's worked since Gilgamesh. But they don't want to do that because they either don't know how to do it, or they want to make their Riri Williams transgender non-binary TV show and have you like it because she's transgender and non-binary.
She's transgender too? God damn.
Yeah. The actress is transgender non-binary. And so now Riri Williams is in the Marvel Universe. And so along with top of being a psychopath because she steals Tony Stark's armor and then gets mad when he wants it back. But
I didn't know any of that. Jesus.
Me neither.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's not hard to make a new character. My Punisher-esque superhero, the Wraith, comes home for Thanksgiving. Her entire family is killed. Boom! Everybody loves her. You know, it's not hard, and so it's frustrating to watch these people take established characters, race swap them, and gender swap them, and then say you should like them because it's a woman now, or she's black now, or whatever, she's bi now. And I'm like, no, that's not why people like characters. That's why you like characters. But like I'm always telling authors are not your audience. Readers are, and readers have different expectations.
Yeah, I would say it's ridiculously shallow to assume that we're going to like these characters because of your shallow reasons. That makes no sense to me. Man, finding out that the Ironheart, that is ridiculous. What a 180 bypass War Machine to make this garbage.
The biggest news on Twitter yesterday was that they had cast a non-binary transgender actor in the Ironheart TV show, and it was just like, why is this news? Like it shouldn't matter. Is the actor good or not? Do they fit the role or not? But we got a super chat from Mexican Iron Man.
Thank you.
For $9.99. I'm tired of these Hollywood people playing not to lose instead of playing to win, creatively speaking. I think a lot of it's also just laziness. Like me and Jeff have had conversations about how most people writing in Hollywood aren't actually writers. They're like people's assistants or roommates or whatever that happen to like churn out a script and knew the right people to get it made. And a lot of this stuff where it's like, oh, how do we open up to a new market? We need to get more black people watching Star Wars, so let's make like a character black or something like that,
and then pretend that he's going to be a Jedi, and then make him useless.
Take it back, yeah.
And it's like how do we get more women into sci-fi? Let's create a main character who's a woman like Rey. You know, like it's so
Skywalker.
Rey's a character? I thought she was just a placeholder that they forgot to put back in.
And there's this other thing where basically Hollywood was really good at getting widespread acceptance for homosexuality by covertly, making gay characters a bigger and bigger thing in TV and movies and stuff like that. So it got to the point where people were just like, okay, gay people, like that's cool. Now they're trying to do the same thing with non-binary and trans and all this other stuff. And people are like, whoa, like you're going a little bit too hard, too fast on this stuff.
Here's the problem with that, though, is what they ended up doing isn't making gay characters bigger gay people. They ended up pushing out, and Lamar, you probably noticed this, for like the last 30 years, every police captain on television was a black man or a black woman, right? Well, what happened in the last 10 years? They all got kicked out of their jobs to be replaced by gay people who are either Hispanic or white, because gay people are the new police captain.
Yeah, aka War Machine and Ironheart.
Yeah, my show has a gay character. It's the police captain who's in the show for 10 minutes. And it's like, okay, Law and Order had one of the most popular characters of any TV show ever, played by a black man, that everybody loved, yet you get rid of him in a new show, and you just so you can have a gay person as the captain and no black people, and now you can say, oh, hey, I checked all the diversity boxes because I got this gay person. And if you say I don't like that, you're a homophobe.
It's the game of diversity. It's like
it's not they're not truly looking for diversity. They're looking to impress their immoral friends.
Well, it's almost like they're trying to push it just far enough so that they can tell someone that they're racist or sexist or bigots in some way. I just sent you a link, Matt, to that. That's the new Riri Ironheart look. It looks like War Machine. Like when you get a chance to look at it,
it looks like Legos. Is what it looks like.
It looks horrible. I've never seen where it looks like a knockoff Iron Man. Like if South Korea made a version of Iron Man called that's what it would look like.
Well,
Jesus.
If you know the story of Ironheart, the comic book was written so badly. She became a superhero because at 8 years old, quote, she was the smartest person on the planet.
That makes no sense.
No.
And so she was bored, and so she stole Iron Man's armor and made a suit of armor, and then gets mad when people wanted it back, and she calls them racist. Because it isn't about her being Iron Man. It isn't about her being smart. It's about her condition as being oppressed by other people. And that makes for a terrible storyline, because you either you agree with the storyline and you're like, oh yeah, people are oppressed, this is horrible, or you feel like you're being accused of being the oppressor. And neither one of those is a healthy feeling to have as a reader or a viewer. She's a terrible character, but she would be really easy to make right. But Marvel doesn't care about legacy anymore. They just care about their check boxes.
It looks like a knockoff version of Iron Man.
I just long for the old days. I long for the old days when people didn't have a stamp on their forehead telling everybody what they did with their genitals. So I wish we could go back to that. That's all.
So speaking of the old days, we have Kral Urban, who has come out and says he wants more Dredd. Yeah. So like we had the classic Sylvester Stallone Judge Dredd movie, and then Kral Urban followed that up with the titular Dredd film. And I gotta give Urban props, because he's one of the few actors who never took off the helmet, because that was the character. And basically, Urban said in a recent interview, he's like, I don't even care if I get the part. I just want more Dredd movies, because there's so many great Judge Dredd storylines out there that I would like to see adapted to the screen. And the publisher for Judge Dredd has actually been trying to get a TV series off the ground. I Am Global, and it was called Judge Dredd Mega City 1. I've been hearing about this for like years now, about them trying to get a Mega City 1 show going. But for whatever reason, it's been stalling in development hell for a long time. But I wanted to get your guys' take. What did you think of the two Dredd movies, and would you like to see more? Let's start with Lamar.
Oh boy. The first one was basically a cartoon with real people in it. I appreciate it. It was 90s. You can't get the look of Sylvester Stallone in spandex. That's when. And then who else was in that movie? Rob Schneider. Rob Schneider had that weird run of where he was like the sidekick in every movie or whatever. So that was interesting. I did really like Kral Urban in the Judge Dredd movie. I liked that movie. I guess I'm one of the few, because nobody else went to go see it. But I would love to see a show of this. I think it would be, you would have that claustrophobic kind of, maybe this is the wrong word, like post-apocalyptic feel. Everybody's living on each other. He's going in, he's going through like the city, hunting down bad guys. I would really like to see that. If they can bring Kral Urban back, I'd be for it. So that's my take on it. Yeah.
Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, well, the original with Stallone, I love it. It's I'll watch that anytime. It's so great. And that robot that was in it was really awesome.
Absolutely.
One of my favorite things. I did like the Kral Urban one as well. I like that he didn't take the helmet off. Thought that was pretty cool. So yeah, I definitely want to see more Dredd. Like, hell yeah. So if they don't bring him back, who would you replace him with? That's the thing.
Maybe John Bernthal.
He'd be one, yeah.
Could be
He's
good.
a Punisher
Good one.
now, though.
Yeah, he is though.
Yeah.
Jeffrey, do you think that a Mega City 1 TV show would ever fly nowadays? Like, can they ever get it off the ground?
And it just depends on where they targeted and who they targeted and what network it was on. I kind of miss the days where shows skirted the line between being watchable by everybody and being well written enough that adults would enjoy them as like mature. Because I'm not big into swearing and I don't like a lot of nudity or
Like
sex.
Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Yeah, and so that was the thing about Picard that got me was like as soon as they did the F word and then the really cringy sex scene, I was like, I'm out. And the also I have 5 kids, so I like to be able to watch stuff with my kids. The Dredd movie was obviously rated R, and it wasn't something I'd watch with my kids. But Kral Urban was so BA in that movie that it's hard not to like him in it, to the point where I wish Mandalorian had followed suit and never taken off the helmet.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would love to see Kral Urban as Judge Dredd, and I think a show like that could totally work for the audience that probably wants it to be really racy and full of F words. It would probably need to be on like HBO Max or something like that. But I think it would work really well if they had a right director and if they had Kral Urban. After his run as Billy Butcher, he's always been really good. There's never been a show or movie that I've ever seen him in, even that cheesy one where he was like a killer who was a cop.
With the vampire one?
Yeah, he's never been bad.
No.
He was in that TV show Almost Human a couple of years ago that was really good.
I like that.
But he got a lot of noticeability as Billy Butcher, so I feel like he could probably get it made again, and it would be really good. I wouldn't watch it just because it's going to be heavily, if the only way that they'll do it is if there's lots of nudity and swearing, and that's just not my cup of tea. But I do like Kral Urban a lot.
It's mine.
So Brian, your thoughts on this?
Everything he said is correct, except for that is my cup of tea.
Yeah, mine too.
And I would like to see an R-rated. I would love it. Here's the problem, though. If you made it more, I like to have things I can watch with my kids too. Except for I would never assume that Judge Dredd is one of those things. Like Judge Dredd needs to be gnarly. It needs to have.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be right up to the edge where like the people that handle the rating are like, oh, I think you need to take out a couple things so we can give you that R rating. That's what we need from a Judge Dredd or a Judge Dredd or a Blade movie or a Deadpool. Like the source material is very, very, very good and has that edge. So if you're not like pushing it right up that edge, I think that you're not doing the source material justice. Now you could make a good, a lesser version of it, but with an amazing story and get by. You could, but I believe that I would rather see the gnarly version.
I mean, did you guys ever read the comic book?
Yeah, I love the comic book.
Back in the day, early '80s when it first came out. I mean, It wasn't, it was bloody, but I mean, it wasn't full of F words or.
Yeah.
Still really good.
You can also not have a lot of cursing, so you can have a lot of violence and a lot of that stuff, and tone down the cursing for sure. Like, I agree with you, Jeffrey. I don't think that every single movie and TV show has to throw curse words in there for just the sake of doing so.
Mm-hmm.
However, I do like when a story calls for a well-placed curse word, and because it's like this is what the audience is thinking right now, and when you have that curse word in the right place, you're like, and it's not just thrown out there for the sake. Like so many shows right now for no reason whatsoever just curse,
Mm-hmm.
and it lessens the explanation point when they should be cursing. Case in point, I know it's a very crazy, deep cut, but you guys remember that movie with Kevin Costner and Robin Hood?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's me. They made it.
That's the one. Okay, so there was no cursing the whole entire time, right? And they have this crazy idea where they're gonna use the what is it called, trebuchet, and they're gonna. Is that what it's called, a trebuchet?
It was catapult. Yeah.
Catapult.
Yeah.
They're gonna catapult them over the, and it's ridiculous. What a stupid idea this is. The entire audience is like, that's not a good idea, and they do it. And Christian Slater, who's at that moment playing the audience like F me, they made it.
The
And
ultimate
it's the
hanging
only
a
curse
lantern.
word in the entire movie.
Yeah.
That's it.
Dude.
And you get one F-bomb for a PG-13.
Yeah.
Back in
One,
the day,
and-
now it's like 4.
That was perfectly placed, bro. Perfectly placed.
yeah.
Because
No, I
when
agree.
I watched that, I thought, F me, they made it.
Not gonna lie, man. I love that movie. That's like
Love
one of
that
my
movie.
secret shame movies I've always liked.
Oh, I love that
Robin Hood
movie so much.
Yeah,
And,
You don't need to be ashamed about that. It's a great movie.
The guy that passed away that played
it's
the bad
not a
guy,
good
what's
movie.
his name?
It's Kevin Costner's not good in that movie, man.
No, but yeah, but Morgan
It's-
Freeman
it's
is.
good. Yeah.
The sheriff
Yeah.
is. There's a lot of people.
Oh,
Yeah.
Alan Rickman.
Oh, he's
is the
great.
sheriff of
Alan
Nottingham.
Rickman, yes.
Awesome. So Vader, there was actually a comic book that they put out with Judge Dredd not too long ago, where Judge Dredd enters some type of multi-dimensional portal.
Oh,
and
God.
he meets the Sylvester Stallone
I
version
hate it when they do that.
and Kral Urban version of himself. But what do you think? Would there be room for a Judge Dredd cinematic universe somewhere?
Sure. I mean, why wouldn't there be? I mean, there's a million streaming services out there. I can totally see them doing a Judge Dredd series on like HBO Max or Netflix or something. It just needs the budget, and it needs people that can be faithful to the material. You know, that's all. I love both these movies. You know, I feel kind of weird talking about these movies right now because we're going to be doing a Judge Dredd week on the podcast here next month, I think. And I'm trying to save most of my thoughts for that. But I can say that I do like both Judge Dredd with Stallone and Dredd with Urban. I actually prefer the Urban one. I think it's just a dirtier, grittier, less comic booky, I guess, version of the character. Is that would that be an accurate statement? I don't know, but
My problem with the Stallone one is that
the Stallone one's just a straight up campy comic book
right, but
adaptation.
Like they take that and compare it against Demolition Man. That was around the same time.
Oh,
You're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I don't know which movie is which. I always misquote both movies.
But no, I you know, for as unfamiliar with the original source material as I am, Judge Dredd is one of those comic books that I always wanted to like really dive deep into, but I've never had the chance to do it, and I still want to. You know, I still want to go and buy those big old volumes of Judge Dredd comics on the shelf at the comic book shop, and I might do it someday.
Vader,
But I
you should
do
check out Marvel's European line that came out with Judge Dredd, and there was this comic book called Dragon's Claws, which was really good. But Death's Head was the absolute best.
Right on.
And that's something that should make a movie out of someday because that was really good.
Matt, you need to get this comic, bro. Best comic I've ever read. Brickleberry Armageddon.
Brickleberry. Right on. I just I love dystopian future shows, and I know I've always liked Judge Dredd. There's nothing about this character I don't like, and the more Judge Dredd they can give us, as long as they are respectful with it, the better, as far as I'm concerned. Give us more. Absolutely.
So Judge Dredd, is it Armando Santi's best performance or no? Real quick, everyone. Armando Santi.
You shoot a lot of scenery in that.
He was having fun. They just say it how you want to. Whatever. Go ahead. Do what you want. Yeah. Man.
I thought he was good. I don't know.
Oh man, I gotta watch that again now.
All right, so I couldn't have the Perfect Turd podcast guys on without talking about some horror stuff. So we're going to be talking a little bit about the rumors swirling around Halloween Ends. And basically, if you guys haven't been paying attention,
Lamar's reaction's great.
Halloween Ends is the final in the trilogy of the new Halloween reboot. And the test screening reports that have been coming out have not been good. And apparently the plot of the movie has been leaked and fans are up in arms. Now, this is strictly rumor territory. We don't know if this is, in fact, the plot of the movie. But spoiler warning for those of you out there who might be, wanting to be surprised by this. Essentially, what supposedly happens is the beginning of the movie starts off with the fight between Laurie Strode and Michael Myers. He kills Laurie Strode, but he's grievously wounded. A bullied kid finds him and takes his mask and becomes the new Michael Myers and starts going around killing everyone. And Laurie Strode's granddaughter becomes the new Laurie Strode and has to try and stop him. And so basically the original OG Michael Myers is nowhere in this movie after the opening scene, apparently, and that has a lot of kind of like Halloween fans up in arms. Joe and Lamar, I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this. Do you think this is true? And if so, why?
Yeah. Joe, would you like to
go ahead?
I feel like
I got a paper.
Yeah,
down on this, so go ahead.
I'll give a little context. Joe is way more familiar with the history of Halloween than I am, and he was already against Halloween Kills. And I messed around one night. I had a drinkity drink, and I watched it, and I thought I was watching an accidental comedy. That movie,
Evil Dies Tonight. Come on.
Oh
man.
my gosh! By the time it was over, I was just like, yeah, I want Michael Myers. But it was so, and I'm not familiar with any, like, I'm not like into the lore. But then when I see that they wrote this, I'm not surprised. I'm still shocked because it's one of those things where it's like, okay, the social aspect, what are we trying to tell people? A bullied kid then becomes a mass killer by helping a former mass killer.
Oh God.
So it's bad. Like, I don't know if they're trying to say something, and then it's like, so now this kid is going to be Mike Myers. I don't know what the kid looks like, but it's like, so he's supposed to be the apex predator. So this I'm hoping really just for another. I want a real good accidental comedy that they gave us with Halloween Kills. That's how I feel. So Joe, go ahead. I know.
It doesn't surprise me that somebody wrote this, and it sounds like garbage. Now, I think at this point, all the Halloween movies are just bad. And me and Lamar, we watch bad movies all the time. But I have one rule. If you're going to make a bad movie, make it so bad that it's amazing. Take the plot and go nuts with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I have 3 plots that I would go with this that sound better than this, I think. Number 1 plot would be that there's rich elite people that, hunt criminals, and Michael Myers ends up being one of those criminals.
Absolutely.
And he takes everyone out, of course. The other one is kind of like a Rambo. Our U.S. government gets a hold of Michael Myers, and they send him on like a suicide mission to kill terrorists or something like this. And the other one I have is, being really that cool. He's a masked character, he gets roped up into like a pro wrestling thing. He becomes like a pro wrestler. He just travels around as a pro wrestler, killing people and stuff. So that's what if you're going to just go nuts with it at this point, because I don't know what they're doing here with this.
Joe, can I suggest another option?
Go ahead.
We should send him into space and then have him get attacked by nanobots and become super Michael Myers.
Yeah. Sounds great.
That's a good idea, right?
Did they already do like a Jason X in space?
That was the joke, man.
Yeah. I mean, you might as well.
We can call it Mike X.
I kind of like the idea of having him be Kane and the Undertaker's long lost brother.
There you go.
Wreaking havoc on the wrestling circuit. Yeah.
He fights aliens.
Joe and Lamar, I wanted to know, do you think there's any truth to the rumors of this plot?
I think so. It's because it just doesn't surprise me that someone thought of it. I would go, yeah, I could see them thinking this is a good idea.
If Halloween Kills is my indication that this might be what they do. And it's just like I said, I'm shocked but not surprised, because I'm just like, well, they're just, they're trying to be edgy or conscious or something. It's weird what they're doing with that plot, but they tried to do that also with Halloween Kills, and it made no sense at all. Like, so yeah, I believe it. Yeah.
At this point, it's just so off the cliff.
Yeah.
That you might as well just make it into a goofy B movie, please. Do something crazy with it.
All right. Real quick,
the point where I'm afraid
super
for
chat
them to make things.
From Mexican Iron Man for $5. Good grief! I hope this is not the actual script story. When will this crap in Hollywood end? It kind of makes you want, like, I actually enjoyed Halloween Kills. I thought it was like kind of like a fun, like, horror slasher movie. It wasn't the best, obviously, but it was enjoyable enough for me. This sounds like they're trying to somehow end their trilogy and then spin off a new Michael Myers thing, and it doesn't sound good. Jeff, if you were in charge of this trilogy, how would you end it?
I'm not, horror is not really my area of expertise, but I wouldn't. I hesitate to tell anybody ever to kill a beloved main character in the first 5 minutes of the movie and replace him. I can't think of another movie, Terminator Dark Fate, that did that recently, that bombed horribly, Terminator Dark Fate, but you shouldn't do it. There's a guy on YouTube called Call Me Chato. He was a Hollywood executive, and he does all these great breakdowns. And he's talking about that. My problem is I'm a writer, right? I love storytelling. Whether it's movies or TV shows or books or comics. I live and breathe storytelling. And so I look at this stuff and I go, why are they telling such a bad story? And then he was saying, it's because they're not telling a story. It's 19 people trying to get whatever they want out of a TV show or a movie into it. And they don't really care about the story because none of them are writers and none of them are storytellers. So that's what
Chato is actually going to be on our panel next Saturday.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah. Brian, what do you think of the plot for Halloween Ends?
I got $50 says that the bullied kid is probably a Republican that frequents
Trump supporter.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I guarantee you he comes in with the red hat and he takes it off and he goes, puts the Michael Myers in out. And then he brandishes the machete. Like,
Oh, God.
You know that's what happens. You know.
Probably hates immigrants too.
No, he despises immigrants. The first one he kills is an immigrant neighbor who happens to also be gay.
What's Trump's youngest son's name? I forget.
Barron.
Yeah. Halloween 4, The Rise of Barron. Yeah.
It's so obvious and on the nose. It's probably what it will be.
The plot sounds absolutely.
The number one rule for slasher movies is you can't ever kill your slasher, right?
Yeah. I mean, Matt Vader, like if you've watched the Halloween Ends trailer, so there are parts in it where Michael Myers is fighting Laurie Strode, and he's the messed up Michael Myers from Halloween Kills, and then you see a different Michael Myers throughout the trailer where he's very clean. He's got like the mask looks new, and it's very clear that there's like a different Michael Myers in the trailer than the one that's sharing the screen with Laurie Strode. So I'm inclined to believe that this plot leak is true. What do you think?
I think I don't watch these movies. That's what I think. Asking me what I think about a Michael Myers movie is like asking me what I think about string theory, because I don't really watch them. I've never really been into this genre of movie. But I do know there are certain rules that they have to apply, and the number one rule is don't ever be in a cabin by yourself. Don't hang out with a lot of teenagers, and you never kill your big bad. So this sounds terrible. I'm not gonna lie. This sounds really bad.
Terrible. Yeah.
So
sounds terrible.
It sounds terrible. I do not like Michael Myers movies. I never really liked Jason movies. I didn't like Freddy movies. It's just not my genre. And I don't know what really else to say other than it's probably gonna make just enough money to make Halloween 4, The New Breed or something, so who knows? I don't know what else to say. There's an audience out there for this. A lot of people like these movies, and your fiance loves this shit, dude. So as long as they make people happy, they'll keep making them. And this is the one genre of movie that I really don't care if they do. It doesn't bother me.
Brian, they already did H2O.
So
did they really do H2O?
Yeah, they did. But speaking of movies that nobody wants to watch, let's talk about some unreleasable movies that people aren't ever going to get to watch. And on the tail of Batgirl, we had an interesting article come out by the Hollywood Reporter, which talks about 12 notorious movie and TV shows that have never been released. I just want to touch on some of them. So like a lot of people are saying like, oh, release the Batgirl movie, But Warner's is like, well, if we release it, we can't take it as a tax write-off, so that's never going to happen. So chances are people are never going to see Batgirl, and I don't think that's a big crime because it looks absolutely terrible. Supposedly, the test screening results were horrid and stuff. But one of the things,
like an
that
Instagram model that was cosplaying as Batgirl. It doesn't even look like a real Batgirl.
So we're doing Tremors Week this week on the Salty Nerd podcast. And one of the interesting things is that the Sci-Fi Network actually commissioned a pilot for a new Tremors TV show. Now, there was already one Tremors TV show starring Michael Gross that went for one season, but this one actually came back. It got Kevin Bacon back. They went back to the City of Perfection, and supposedly it was a really good pilot that Sci-Fi, for whatever reason, decided not to pick up. Probably because the show was going to be too expensive, and they were in the middle of being acquired by Universal, I think, at the time. And so Kevin Bacon's been on record as saying, like, hey, this was a really good pilot. It should have been picked up as a TV show, but no one's ever going to get to see it. What do you guys think? Is this a tragedy? Would you like to have seen a Kevin Bacon starring Tremors TV show?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. When we decided to do Tremors this week, I was really kind of hesitant because we all know that the first movie is great and the rest of them just fall off a cliff. But I didn't know this thing existed. And when you showed me this article and I watched this trailer, I was blown away because this looks just as good, or if not better, than the original movie. And I want to see this. I wish can we play the trailer, or will we get dinged up?
Sure. No, I don't think anyone owns the trailer anymore.
So I would really like for people to see this because it looks amazing.
It looks fantastic, yeah.
Yeah, let's just
the Bon Jovi music already.
Yeah.
That's what's gonna get you dinged.
Yeah. Da 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 da.
Gravel. Handsome hero.
So what happened to that hot guy who killed all the graboids?
Yes.
This is so good.
How'd you kill all the graboids?
So did I. So did the world. But maybe we were wrong.
You're trying to live in a memory that doesn't exist anymore because everything else has changed.
Couldn't pass up a chance to be the hero again.
Okay, fine. You all bury your heads in the sand, which, if I'm right, is a really stupid place to put your heads.
Hey!
Right, there must be some other explanation. We've had false alarms before.
Are you okay? Are you all right?
Not a sound.
It's like I'm freaked out, man.
This looks amazing.
Oh my god.
I had another vision. She's getting closer. You want them back, just like the good old days, right?
I got him.
Oh.
Nothing works here! I've been through all this before. They don't plan, they don't strategize, they just kill.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
What
It looks
year?
great. 2018, man. It's just
Oh, that was in 2000. Okay.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
really new.
I can't believe that didn't get picked up.
When
Yeah.
was this supposed to come out?
So this was a 2018 TV pilot for Sci-Fi. I think that the reason was because it was going to be too expensive for Sci-Fi. But man, some other network should have picked this up. It was
Yeah.
really good.
100%.
Oh man, it looks great. I
I think
love
they
the.
also were going
I
away
even
from
love the
science
campy
fiction still.
Tremors ones, man.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That one movie, I forgot what it was. I think it was like Tremors 3, where the guy had like built his entire house to be like anti-Tremors.
Yeah. That was Michael Gross. Yeah.
Yeah.
So another interesting thing
Oh,
that was
Lord.
never released was called Star Wars Detours, and this was Seth Green's kind of Robot Chicken style Star Wars short series that he spent like 3 years working side by side with George Lucas on, and they actually made all these. There's something like I want to say like 62 or like no, I'm sorry, 39 episodes that they actually made, and
That's
they had
crazy.
another 62 scripted to be made. And this was made before George Lucas sold off Lucasfilm to Disney. And so the pre-Disney Lucasfilm produced these things. And once Disney acquired them, they're like, well, these are Star Wars parodies. They're not really with what we want to do with Star Wars. So we're just going to shelve them and nobody's ever going to get to see them. And Seth Green is like, well, it's a shame that nobody's ever going to get to see these, but I got to spend 3 years working with my idol, George Lucas. So I'm cool with it. Do you guys think that you would like to see these like little Robot Chicken style Star Wars sketches at some point? Should they release them on Disney Plus?
Yeah,
Listen,
it's like little
there-
YouTube clips. Yeah.
That there
Go ahead.
is 40 episodes of a Seth Green made pre-Disney purchase series of shorts out there, animated shorts that he made while consulting George Lucas. Color me intrigued. I like Robot Chicken. I think it's a really funny show.
Same.
And I'm kind of mad now that I found out this existed because I really want to see these. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, just to see what he had in mind. I know that's 40 of these things. That's a lot. That's 3 years of streaming seasons for this thing. That's crazy.
There's a lot of streaming.
Yeah, I mean, if they can put out those shitty little I Am Groot shorts, they can certainly put some of these out there for us all to check out. Put them on their YouTube channel or something at least. I don't know. Definitely want to see this.
Anyone else interested, or has Star Wars been killed for everyone?
I think Disney probably. I actually think it's the right move to not do it because, and Brian's probably going to disagree with me here, but Star Trek Below Decks or whatever makes a mockery of Star Trek.
Lower Decks.
Lower Decks, thank you. It makes it impossible to look at Star Trek at all seriously ever. And that's probably what they're thinking about for the Star Wars shorts, is if there are these official Star Wars shorts that make a mockery of Star Wars, no matter how funny they might actually be, you lose something when you do that. Now, you can argue that they've already lost all of that with all the other crap they put out, and I wouldn't disagree with you. So they might as well throw this crap in the bin too. But I can see why initially that maybe they didn't want to do that because they didn't want to, for the same reason they didn't want to, devalue Batman over the Warner Brothers side.
How is this, would something like this being out there be any different than all those terrible Lego cartoons that they have?
Different audience.
I mean, okay, different audience. This is made for me, not for little kids. I don't have a problem separating this from canonical Star Wars. It's just another fun thing out there. It's no different to me than the Family Guy parody versions of the movies, and I love those. Those are hilarious to me. You know, it's just
I agree with the comparison Lower Decks. However, I also don't see Lower Decks canonically.
Yeah, I don't either.
I watch Lower Decks the same way I watch Rick and Morty. It's a fun TV show in a universe that I'm familiar with, and that's it. I don't look at this and go, because Q showed up in this episode, that means that he was not. I don't care. So, in fact, to be honest, I don't look at any cartoons. I know this is blasphemy to all the Star Trek animated series people, but no cartoons are canon to me. They're fun to watch, not canon, because they are stuck in this reality where they could do whatever they want. So how can you possibly take that whatever you want reality and make it canon to a series that is trying to take its canon seriously? You can't. So
yeah, when I get in this argument all the time, and I'm probably wrong, but when we're also hyper focused on canon being things that we see on a screen in front of us, when people tell me that books and comic books are hard canon, I always call bullshit because they're not. They're soft canon at the most. And even when authors like Neil Gaiman come in and change canon of characters and stuff for his own series, it just makes me wonder what the definition of canon really is, because there's things like in Star Wars, for example, everybody's mad about the MCU or the extended universe, and what Disney did by decanonizing all that was they just made it so they could cherry pick all the good stuff and change it as they want to go.
Right.
And that's what they do that same thing with comic books, all these Marvel comic books that they have things to pull from. They say those are hard canon too, but they're only hard canon until a director or a writer comes along that's making a movie or a series and they want to tweak it a little bit.
Well, here's the thing about canon, and the reason why it's so important. Same thing with continuity, even though comics do retcon all the time, but there's certain things that never retcon until the last 10 years, and there's a reason for it. Why aren't there indie comics that are as popular as Superman, Spider-Man, or Batman? There's plenty of good indie comic writers. Ethan Van Sciver and all the Comicsgate people, they're fantastic. Why aren't there comics that are more popular than Spider-Man?
Because
the answer is canon. The answer is history. When you pick up a Spider-Man comic, there isn't just the comic you're reading. There's 70 years of history behind it, or however many years of history behind it. It's the same thing with Star Wars. And when you start mocking all of that history and changing all that history, it becomes meaningless, and you lose a value that you can't really define in the work. And so, no matter how good mocking it is, you're devaluing the work by doing that, by constantly changing canon, by race swapping, by gender swapping, by constantly introducing new characters that are better at everything than the characters that came before. You're devaluing the work, and you will get to the point where these characters are meaningless and end up with no value.
And that's where I'm at right now with Star Wars. I agree with you. I look at Star Wars and I go, I don't care. Like as someone who used to love it, and I read everything, and I waited patiently for years, and I have all the posters and the movies, and I loved it. And now it's gotten to the point where I legitimately have zero interest in anything Star Wars. I don't care.
Star Wars is Star Trek now,
yeah.
All right. So in addition to this, there's another one I wanted to highlight, which is called 100 Years. This is a short film that was made by Robert Rodriguez and John Malkovich. And nobody knows what the plot's about. Nobody knows what it's about, but it was done as a kind of synergistic commercial type thing for Louis the 13th cognac, which they say it takes 100 years to make like a bottle of this stuff. And so they made this short to coincide with the making of a new bottle. And they put it in a time capsule that will not be released until November 18th, 2115. So people will have to wait 100 years to get to see this Robert Rodriguez short film starring John Malkovich. And I'm kind of intrigued by it. What do you guys think about this one?
Where's the time capsule?
None of us will ever get to see it, but it's in like.
I mean, we'll see. Where's the time capsule?
It's in a vault in France.
All right, so I think
that this sounds like a movie in of itself.
Yeah, I think there's a movie that we're writing right now where a bunch of Robert Rodriguez fans just make it a point to dig it up. Why we got to wait 100 years? Let's just go get the movie now.
Well, it's in a sealed vault behind bulletproof glass, along with like a bunch of other stuff that they're not going to release for another 100 years.
I've seen a lot of Ocean's 11 movies. They don't seem to. They have no problem getting past that stuff. So
well, they're not going to have the right cords to plug into the machines to watch this video in 100 years anyway.
Actually, Vader, well,
technology will be way past that.
It'll be like 700 years from now when we finally discover it, because there won't be a society in 100 years or electricity. No one's gonna care about the movie when they're trying to find their next dog to eat.
Yeah, no one's gonna, even if there is society, like you're gonna be like Robert Rodriguez who and Malkovich like who?
What's this?
some Spy Kids comes to mind or something like that. Because I like and I like Robert Rodriguez. I like Desperado. I even like The Faculty. I like Sin City. But when I first saw this, I was just like, thanks a lot, asshole. Like, I mean, I'm a fan of your stuff, and there's something that I can't see. So I thought it was really pretentious. I mean, it may be good, but I'm just like, well, thanks a lot. Like,
hey man, this is something.
Go ahead.
This is something Robert Rodriguez made at his home studio in his backyard with like the actors, kind of like how he did with the Josh Hartnett Sin City opener. So like nobody knows what this movie's about. Go ahead, Matt.
I was just saying, I have no interest in this because it'd be like going to the distillery, and you're like, hey man, we're making this really good new bourbon, but you're never going to get to drink it because it takes 100 years to age. And I'm like,
you're gonna be dead times 2.
I don't care. I don't care.
Why are you telling me about this?
Why are you telling me about this
How
great
does this
bourbon
affect me?
if I can't drink it? It's just like, get out of here,
Bro.
They need to get it.
What was that movie? Being John Malkovich, right?
Yeah.
All right. There a sequel, Saving John Malkovich.
This is what that yeah.
Well, there's a movie that came out. Well, it didn't come out. Obviously, we're talking movies that didn't come out. But I saw a trailer for a movie about 6 years ago, I think. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing movie trailer I've ever seen. And it was a Chinese movie. I'm not huge into Chinese movies, but I feel like Hong Kong movies are about 10 years behind ours when it comes to like quality and stuff like that. But then, of course, our movies have all taken a dive in the last few years. So this one looked really, really good. And it looked basically, the easiest way to describe it would be like the Chinese Avatar, right? And it was called Empires of the Deep. And then about a week after I saw the trailer, I heard that the studio went busted, the director got arrested or something, and it's $150 million blockbuster. Completely finished. Looks amazing, about a war between mermaids and mermen or something. It will never see the light of day.
Oh my God.
So another thing that's not going to see the light of day is the pilot for the proposed first Game of Thrones spinoff called Blood Moon, which was shot and edited and completed. And the HBO executives took a look at it and said, this doesn't feel like Game of Thrones. It's too far removed from what we already had. And so they shelved it, and then they went with House of the Dragon instead. And in addition to that, the original Game of Thrones pilot by Benioff and Weiss, which was apparently so bad that that it was in danger of not getting picked up by HBO. And then they went back and reshot it with like a different director and a bunch of other stuff, recasting certain roles. And they basically fixed all the problems with it. My guess is they stuck closer to George's novel in the reshoots than they did in the original pilot. And so we got these two different Game of Thrones pilots that are probably never going to be seen by anyone because, if it's ever released and they make money off of it, they have to pay taxes on this stuff. But would any of you guys be interested in seeing either of these pilots?
I'm in a weird place right now. My brother and I are talking about next week reviewing House of the Dragon, and he was a huge fan of the books, and I liked Game of Thrones up until the last few episodes. And we're like, we're setting our schedule. I'm getting graphics ready, like I'm making stings and stuff, like the other stuff we review. Like we're gonna start reviewing this every week.
Mm-hmm.
And we put out a couple like feeler videos about House of Dragon, like just sort of talking about developments and whatever. And the lowest views our live channel has like ever gotten. So I'm like, are we gonna put all this effort into like reviewing this House of Dragon when there's clearly very little interest right now in this series, even though Game of Thrones is still like the #1 series streamed on HBO? How is it that our last video has like 25 views? It makes no sense, bro. I don't know.
It does kind of make sense, actually, if you think about it. Game of Thrones is not an epic fantasy, and it's not a fantasy series. It's a mystery.
Mm-hmm.
And once that mystery is resolved, there's nothing else redeeming about that show to intrigue you as a person. So once that mystery is resolved, you can completely put it out of your mind, which is why it's so different than Lord of the Rings, right? Because Lord of the Rings is not about who will be king at the end. It's not about Aragorn's tax policies. It's about an epic struggle between good and evil and how people behave. Whereas Game of Thrones is like, who's going to be on the Iron Throne? And once that's resolved, the story's over and you forget about it. And, of course, Game of Thrones was resolved so horribly bad. I think everybody is just done with it.
I
actually think season 8 did such irreparable damage to the franchise that HBO would have been better suited to basically decanonize season 8 and spend this money on redoing season 8, bringing back all the actors and doing it right, and then going off and doing some spin-offs.
Oh my gosh, they should have had a 9th season where like the last half of season 8 was like a Braun dream, where he had like a dream about it.
No, I would have even just had the studio come out and be like, look, we know that this season was disappointing. We're decanonizing it. We're shelving it. We're not making it available anymore. We're redoing it with talented showrunners. All right, so the last,
I felt that way about the third Star Wars movie, the new one with Rey. I felt like it should have opened with Rey opening her eyes and Luke standing over her saying, "And that's what happens if you don't train to be a good Jedi."
Lamar, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just saying, I've just gotten into the 2nd season of Game of Thrones, and that's what everybody tells me. Is like, wait till you get to the last season. Even my girlfriend is like, it's kind of bad because like you're just waiting for the iceberg.
After season 3, they kind of veer off from the novels, and the novels are my favorite novels of all time. I love the Game of Thrones novels. But the show, once it starts doing its own thing, and Benioff and Weiss start thinking they're better writers than George R.R. Martin, the show just goes off a cliff. So like the first 3 seasons of Game of Thrones are very good, but that's because they stick to the novels. And then once they go off in their own direction, it gets bad. The last one I want to talk to you guys about is kind of an interesting one. So this is a movie called The Day the Clown Cried. And this is a Jerry Lewis, quote unquote, comedy about a clown that is imprisoned by Nazis. And his job is to entertain kids on their way to the gas chamber.
Oh my God!
Jesus Christ!
And Jerry Lewis, like this is a completed movie, and Jerry Lewis was so embarrassed by it because it's such a weird film that he never released it. And when he died, he donated the only finished copy to the Library of Congress, and basically no one gets to screen it until 2024. Which is just 2 years away.
Whoa!
But there are a few people who have gotten to see this film before it kind of got locked away, and they're like, "This is one of the heaviest, darkest, most disturbing films we've ever seen." And I wanted to get your guys' take. Do you think that this is something that you actually want to watch?
I think I do. That sounds interesting.
I don't want to watch that.
Wow. I don't know what to say. I really don't. It's just like, because I read the little description down there and I was like, what is it? Because when you think of Jerry Lewis, comedy and stuff like that, but like that's such a turn. It's just like, whoa, like
I'm so dark.
I'm more interested in the social media outcry that's going to come along with this.
Oh, it's going to be an epic meltdown. It's proportionally, it's like the tsunami of Twitter's.
Oh my God.
Think about this. How many people are Holocaust deniers as it is? And then on the other side of that, oh my God, this is going to, you're right.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty epic.
It's not about the movie. It's for me, it's about what happens after the movie.
Jerry Lewis was a crazy dude. What a bizarre plot for a movie.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was very dark. It was made in the 70s.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, that's 70s.
He probably thought he was doing something pretty, like meaningful, impactful.
Yeah.
We all, creative-wise, we all get into these spaces where we have this idea and we start exploring it. And it's not until you actually say it out loud, you're like, oh, that's a bad idea. And for the movie version of that is watching it when you're done filming it. And then
but that's
and going, no.
The problem that Hollywood has right now is that there's not enough people saying, maybe that's a bad idea. So
yeah,
you can't have bad ideas when you've never had good ones.
That's true. That's a really good point.
Speaking of Hollywood, someone saying like, "Oh, this was probably a bad idea," I want to talk about our last topic of the day, which is basically Netflix has canceled a controversial series after just one season. And basically, this was the show Q-Force, which was a show, an adult animated show about LGBTQ spies going on adventures.
It's unwatchable.
I sent the trailer to the panel just to prepare them for it. I don't think any of them have recovered from it since. But
you Oh yeah, I guess you did. I didn't watch it.
I watched the whole series.
Oh wow.
The reason that Netflix gave for canceling this show, even though it had high ratings, or I should say high good reviews, right? Good reviews, is that the viewership was almost non-existent for this show. Like very few people watched it. And Netflix has been going through a kind of like content crisis recently where basically Netflix is losing subscribers and their entire business model is based off of subscriber growth. And so they've been taking out loans and stuff like that to create all this content. And a lot of their kind of diversity and inclusion content, which this was Q-Force was a part of, has been so underperforming so badly that they're canceling a bunch of stuff and they're trying to figure out, okay, maybe the diversity inclusion stuff isn't what we need in an economic downturn. So they're going with kind of shifting their production slate to stuff that's a little bit more mainstream. So I want to get your guys' take on this. Do you think Netflix is pivoting to more mainstream content? And is this kind of a signal of things to come where like all the woke garbage out there kind of gets canceled? Brian, since you saw this series, let's start with you.
You guys, this series is amazing. And let me explain to you why. On every conceivable level, it is the most offensive, horrible garbage I have ever seen, ever. And I've seen Faces of Death. This is the worst. I remember watching this and being like, oh, I thought they were trying to normalize. No, this is not normalization. This is like just the most offensive, horrible, gross nonsense I've ever seen. In fact, Netflix should double down, check all the boxes and be like, you know what? Screw it. It got good ratings from the 3 people we talked to that also happened to be at the Pride Parade. So let's give it a season 2. No, let's give it 5 seasons. Screw the haters, man. Let's have some pride and give it 5 seasons. Spend some money, boys. That's what I thought about it.
So I want to throw this to Jeffrey because one of the things that struck me about this show is that it's all about, being gay. And to me, like if you're going to do a self-sustaining comedy, something that people are going to watch long-term, the humor has to be more than just one joke, right? There's only so many times you can make a joke about being gay before it gets tiresome. And you need to have good characters where the humor springs from, as opposed to the concept being what humor springs from. If you look at Friends, the reason Friends was so great and lasted for so long is because the comedy came from the characters and their interactions with one another and their interactions with the world. Whereas with this show, it's very obvious, like it's all just about being gay and how crazy funny gayness is. So I want to get your take on this. What's your take on Q-Force and Netflix kind of shifting strategy?
Well, I watched the first 5 minutes in the trailer, and I was like, oh, I know what the show's about. It's about being gay. It's not about spies. It's not about being funny. It's about being gay and why you're a bad person if you don't want to be gay too. I watched this movie on Netflix, at least I watched the first 30 minutes of it, called Interceptor. It looked like a really cool action-adventure movie. It had this French actress. She was believable in the role. She's like an army captain and she kicks butt, but she gets captured at one point and she's like tied to this chair. And this hick is telling her about how he hates immigrants and, women and children and, blah, blah, blah. And she's like she stops her attempt to escape to go on this tirade for like 10 minutes to tell him why you don't call women by anything other than their name. You don't call them honey or sweetie or, you don't disrespect women. And I'm like, that's just like this Q-Force show. It is not a show about being a spy. It's a show designed to make you feel bad about not wanting to be gay. And I think in an economic downturn, nobody wants that. And I don't think anybody ever wanted it, but I think they got away with it because the people who are making these shows on Netflix and making these decisions are all on the same side, so to speak. But you get to a point where you're not making money and you see your stocks devalue like $150 million this year or something. And you're like, okay, we got to start cutting the fat. And I think Netflix laid off like 300 employees, and most of them from their diversity section. Because when you start losing money, the first thing that goes is the top of Maslow's hierarchies of needs. You stop talking about like what it's like to be a human being or this spiritual quest to convince everybody that being gay is okay, or whatever it is your politics is, and you go back to, I need to find shelter, I need to find food, I need to find security.
Right.
You know, and we just don't have time. Nobody has money or time for watching stuff that is not really good anymore. So in a way, I guess the depression we're about to go into is good, because it's hopefully we'll get rid of all this woke nonsense.
So Joe, you guys
we'll
on
still
the
be alive.
you guys on the Perfect Turd podcast watch a lot of bad stuff. Has Netflix given you plenty of fodder to work with?
Not really. We always end up on Tubi TV.
Oh yeah, Tubi is.
I love Tubi.
Tubi. Oh Lord Jesus, man.
But yeah, I mean, it's a different kind of bad, though. If you think about it, like the Tubi TV bad movies are the goofy. These ones on Netflix, they're bad because they're trying to give a message or whatever. They're spending a lot of money on this stuff, and it's just like bad in a different way. You know what I'm saying? So. Yeah, that's why we're not on Netflix a lot looking for stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty wild when people wonder why shows get canceled when the shows are specifically catered to an extremely small percentage of the real world population.
Oh, I wonder why it got canceled.
It's like, oh, I wonder why it got canceled. Well, because nobody's watching. Because you didn't make it for anybody to watch.
Lamar, one of the interesting things in this article was it was talking about how the audience for adult animation is on the decline, and that they're kind of lumping Q-Force in with cartoons made for adults, where it's basically like the animation departments are the first to go because adults really don't watch cartoons all that much, and there's not really a real market for it. Do you think that that's accurate, or was it just that Q-Force was a bad show?
No, I think because the thing is, from the trailer, I already knew that was going to be the one thing that they had for the show, and that's going to be the problem, because it's like, you see the different characters, but they're not really, to me, different characters. It's all the one thing about them is that they're all gay or in, the LGBT, group and everything. So they're not like characters you can really like connect to. And the problem is that when you single like a show around that, it gets old very quick. You're going to be like, okay, there's no characters that I identify with because that's the only thing they're doing. And I actually saw a review by someone who was gay, and that was their problem. It's just like, okay, this person was saying I'm gay and everything like that, but what else? What about this character? What about this character that they're not trans or they're not bi or anything else? You have to build something. You have to have more to your foundation than just a message. You have to have the good writing there. And then if you don't have that, what Netflix is going to be doing is going to be like, well, back to the drawing board where we're trying to find something that people, watch because we're based off of subscribers. So that's what's going to happen. It's natural. Yeah.
I think there's a problem that I'm having out there with a lot of this new animated stuff that they're giving us, that I just don't feel compelled to watch them because I don't want to be insulted as a grown-up human being. It's like Rick and Morty. I like shows like Rick and Morty because they're entertaining and there's a lot of subtle stuff that you can catch, and the more times you watch it, the more you catch. And it's a fun, smart show. But then there's shows on Netflix like this, like my brother mentioned in the chat. There's a show called Barzar or something like that on Netflix right now. And it's nothing but gross sex fart jokes. And it's almost insulting to the person watching it. And if they want us to watch adult animation, give us funny adult stuff to talk about, not fart jokes and having sex with a 90-year-old lady. It's just stupid. And there's a difference between smart funny and dumb funny. And
it's actually funny because the guys that made that are the same guys that made Brickleberry, which was the opposite of this. And it even has the same voice characters, very similar characters in it. Same sort of jokes, but it's like they're really just sort of mailing it in on that show, because Brickleberry was actually really sort of, it had the fart humor and it had the sex with old lady stuff, but it also had a lot of funny, like really like jokes that took a long time to set up and break down. And by the end of the episode, now you're laughing. That it was really well done. These guys are mailing it in now for sure. They have a contract with Netflix for like 5 series, and they just got to pump out as many series as possible.
So, Matt Bader, I know you didn't even want to talk about this story this morning. Can you give me your thoughts on the overall state of adult animation, not just on Netflix, but across the different
I
streaming
think I just kind
services?
of did. I think there's a lot of outside the whole anime realm, which I don't watch. It's just not my thing. There's just a lot of really they think by putting the term adult on it, it can be nothing but sex and fart and gross jokes. And I feel like a lot of these animated shows just kind of lose their humor when they go so hard on just trying to be offensive. You know, make me laugh. Don't offend me. Make me laugh. You know, this Q4 show, it wasn't for me. It wasn't made for me. They don't want my opinion on it because they know what it is, and they made it for a very narrow band of people who watch Netflix or whatever. Was it a Netflix show? It was,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do they expect? You know, of course it's going to get canceled because nobody watches it. And, you know, I guess trying to find audiences for these weird animated shows is probably kind of hard. You know, the Rick and Morty thing has a very broad audience. You know, anybody can watch that show and get something out of it. It's like I can watch SpongeBob, and there's a lot of really adult, subtle
There's some
stuff.
fun stuff in SpongeBob. Yeah.
Fun stuff in SpongeBob that I love. I mean,
agree.
I went through a SpongeBob binge one weekend a few years back and just laughed my ass off. Same kind of thing with like the old Pinky and the Brain. There are some
Pinky and the Brain's
there's some great dark, really wild adult humor thrown in there, but kids aren't smart enough to catch it. You know, it's really veiled, it's really subtle, and you know that's the kind of animated shows that I like. I don't like this Farzar thing on Netflix. I feel insulted watching that show. It's just it makes me feel dumber for that it even exists.
It's not really about being smart. It's just about what level of development you're at.
Yeah, it's just So I don't know my opinion on the adult animation world. I don't know. It's just I guess there's something out there for everybody, but
I don't think it's declining. I think if anything that it should be on the incline.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of us we're in similar generations, I believe. We grew up watching Simpsons, Family Guy,
Looney Tunes,
South
Bugs
Park,
Bunny.
Looney Tunes, Beavis and Butthead, whatever. I have zero qualms with watching cartoons. Like I complain about cartoons in canon, but I love cartoons.
Dude, we grew up watching cartoons that they won't show on network TV now.
Right. Like here's the deal. I showed that comic book earlier.
Because Slowpoke Rodriguez is offensive.
Right. I showed the comic book earlier because that's a Brickleberry comic. I love it. I like the Bob's Burgers. Dude, I watched the movie with my kids. I love it.
Yeah.
Look, it should be on the incline. Our generation is literally in the buying age. We're in the 30 to 50s. We're in this age where we're the ones that are actually buying crap and consuming things. And we grew up on that the animation. That was our animation style. So it's on the incline. You're just making garbage stuff.
Pretty
much. All right, guys. So that's all of our topics for today. We want to thank everyone who showed up in the chat, and especially those of you who gave us super chats, aka Mexican Iron Man. Thank you so much. We really appreciate the support. Joker, of course. And want to go around the panel, get some final thoughts and where people can find you. Let's start with you, Matt Vader 74.
Oh, you're gonna start with me? Okay. Well, you can find me here at Matt Vader 74, and on this channel every week as we talk about some good movies, some bad movies, and whatever else Kadish decides to torture us with. We are getting ready to go into Tremors week this next week. That's going to be fun. We have a lot of television shows that we're going to be talking about on a weekly basis. So our movie podcast is going to be, the schedule is going to be changing up a little bit. I think we're going to 2 movies a week instead of 3 because we're like going to be cramming 3 different television series or something in there. So that's going to be fun. But yeah, you can just saltynerdvideo.com, that's where I'm at. So.
All right, Brian from the Popcast. Final thoughts and where can people find more of you?
Well, you can find me on Popcast, YouTube.com/the Popcast and the Podcast Live and Twitter Podcast Guys. But final thoughts are, I believe that adult animation, if you take risks, I think that it'll come back with a vengeance because the audience is there. And as far as all the other stuff to talk about, if the story isn't good, then no matter what you try to shove down our throats, we're not going to buy it.
Lamar, final thoughts, and where can people find more of you?
PerfectTurdPodcast.com. We're on Instagram and Twitter. And of course on YouTube.com,
Lamar.
PerfectTurd.com. Don't correct me on live stream. It makes me feel self-conscious. But I just wanted to add a final note. When everybody was talking about like who what was it, Ironheart, Riri
Williams.
Yeah.
I was chuckling because me and Joe were discussing Batwoman season 2, and that is literally what happens. Is that the character who is a black woman who's bisexual steals the bat suit and becomes Batman?
Oh my God!
Great.
Yeah, it's true.
Is that
Joe,
really what happens?
Yes, that is what happens. Joe, final thoughts, and where can people find out more about you?
Well, you can find us at perfectturd.com, Lamar.
Yeah.
And on YouTube, we're the only Perfect Turd podcast there. And final thoughts, yeah, I agree with what Brian said. Like, you have to have a good plot. No matter what it is, it's got to be fun. Don't try to shove anything down anyone's throat. And we're going to have the Salty Nerds on our show, hopefully very soon. And we'll debate some kind of B-movie topic. We might call it episode The Salty Turds.
That'd be fun.
So
there you go. Yeah.
But I do want to give a shout out to the Perfect Turd podcast. It is a very fun show to watch, especially considering some of the terrible movies that you guys cover. And you also do some interviews with like B-movie stars and filmmakers and stuff like that. So there's a lot of fun stuff to check out there. And their link to the YouTube channel is in the description of this video. I highly recommend everyone go check it out. Finally, last but not least, my good buddy, Jeffrey H. Haskell. Where can people find out more about you, your final thoughts, and where can people vote for your book in the Dragon Awards?
Yes, please vote for me. I'm up against some of the biggest names in the industry: David Weber, Timothy Zahn. I said this on my Facebook page. Win or lose doesn't really matter at this point. The fact that I'm on a best military sci-fi ballot with David Weber and Timothy Zahn just sort of made my life. You guys are all around the same age as I am. You know how important those people are in the military sci-fi genre. Timothy Zahn's work should have been translated into Star Wars long ago.
Yes, my favorite books are Timothy Zahn.
He's the entire reason the extended universe exists is because of Zahn. So, but you can go to Dragon Con's website, just Google Dragon Con, or you can find me at jeffreyhaskell.com. Vote for Against All Odds, Grimm's War Book 1. If you like characters that are trying to do the right thing in hard situations, and if you like starships that are cool like the Enterprise, then you're going to love my book. The final thoughts, I tell writers this all the time, and there's a great story about Jim Butcher that I don't think I have time to get into right now, but if you write it well enough, you can do anything you want. If you want to write a story about the hardships of being LGBTQ+ and have people enjoy it, you can do that. You just have to leave it open to interpretation. And that's the biggest problem, is most people don't want to leave it open to interpretation. I want to tell you what to think. So write it well and they will come.
Yeah, you also need to wrap it in an interesting plot to
That's
get
part
that
of writing
across.
well.
Yeah.
People come for the story, but they stay for the characters.
And really cool cover art. Gotta have cool cover art.
Oh, yeah.
Gotta have cool cover art. That's a fact, Jack.
Yes.
Like
if you guys want to vote for Jeffrey's novel, you can find the link to his website in the description, which takes you right there. To my expert panel, thank you so much for coming on this Saturday. We really appreciate all your insights and thoughts on these topics that ultimately don't matter. We really do like to talk about this stuff. Matt Vader 74, my brother from another mother. We've got lots of new episodes coming out this week for the Salty Nerd podcast, which should be a lot of fun. We just finished up August Bites week, and I forget what we're doing this week. Do you remember?
Is this the week Brian sat in?
Yeah, it is, right?
I wasn't there, so I don't care.
It's horror sequels go to space week.
It's already out.
Yeah, it's horror sequels go to Space Week. So Brian sat in for Salty, and we had Tom come in to sit in for Vader because he had family obligations.
Yeah.
But we're covering Critters 4, we're covering Leprechaun 4 in space, and we're wrapping things up with Jason X. And so we got a fun lineup for this coming week for the podcast, and we hope you all check it out. And also come back next Saturday for more Salty Saturday goodness, where we have a whole new panel. I believe Chapo is going to be joining us, along with Vanessa Nader. I think that's how you pronounce it. She is a huge Schwarzenegger and Stallone Twitter
among
person,
other things.
among other things, and it'll be interesting to have some females on the panel for a change.
Yeah, she's going to be our first lady to break up the sausage fest a little bit. So yeah, it'll be fun.
A little bit. All right, so everyone out there watching, thank you so much, and check us out next week. And as always, stay salty, my friends.